Right now, without your permission and without your attention, something inside you is reading. Not metaphorically, mechanically. In roughly 37 trillion cells, molecular machines are moving along a strand, reading it 3 letters at a time and building you, protein by protein, from the instructions they find there. We are so used to the phrase genetic code that we've stopped hearing it. So let's hear it again. Slowly. Your cells are running code. Somebody or something wrote it. Tonight we ask the second question honestly, with the science laid out and the skeptic's best objection at full strength. This is an evidence file. The rules here are simple. We state the claim, we give the strongest objection its full weight, we look at the data, and we say honestly where the weight falls and where it doesn't. No scientists are baffled. No, this destroys atheism. We're weighing evidence, not scoring points, so let's weigh. Start with what is not in dispute. DNA stores information in a 4-letter alphabet, A, T, C, G. The cell reads it in 3-letter words called codons. 4 letters in groups of 3 gives you 4 cubed, 64 possible words. 61 of them specify 1 of 20 amino acids. 3 are stop signs that say end of protein. That mapping, this triplet, means that amino acid is what biologists literally call the genetic code. And here's the part worth sitting with. This isn't loose analogy. It has the formal features of a real information system. There's an alphabet. There's a set of conventions mapping symbols to meanings. There's transcription and there's translation. Biology's own words, not mine. In information terms, each letter carries 2 bits. Each codon, 6. Francis Crick, who co-discovered the structure, framed it exactly this way in 1958. He called it the sequence hypothesis. The order of the letters is a code for the order of the amino acids. The cell is, in the most technical sense available, an information processing system. Now, if you think that settles anything about God, you haven't met the objection. And the objection is good. Here it is at full strength. 1. Code is a borrowed word. Philosopher Paul Griffiths argues that the only literally true thing here is the correspondence between bases and amino acids, and that all the other talk of information, instructions, programs is a vivid way of describing ordinary chemistry and correlation. A code, the skeptic says, normally implies an encoder with intent. Smuggle that intent in by word choice and you've assumed your conclusion. That's a fair hit. 2. Nature demonstrably writes new information. We have observed it. Gene duplication, mutation, and natural selection generate new functional sequences in the lab and in the field. So the slogan, "Information always requires a mind," is simply false as a general claim. Evolution is an information-generating process, full stop. 3. Don't bet on a gap. We don't yet have a complete account of how the first code arose, but science can't explain it yet. Therefore, God is the oldest losing bet in this whole field. Gaps have a habit of closing. Inserting a designer where the data runs out isn't an inference, and it's an IOU. If you're a skeptic watching this, is that your position, stated fairly? I've tried to make it one you'd sign. Now let me show you what survives it. Here's the move most of this debate gets wrong, on both sides. So let's be disciplined. Let's say for the purposes of this argument, I concede objection 2 entirely. Once you have a self-replicating system with a working code, natural selection can and does generate new functional information. I'm not contesting evolutionary biology, let's call that settled, and it's not my lane to relitigate. But notice what that concession does. Selection can only edit a message after there's a system that reads messages. It presupposes the very thing in question, a code, plus the machinery to translate it. Mutation and selection are the cell's spell check. They don't explain the existence of the language. So the real question, the one that doesn't dissolve into a metaphor and doesn't get a free ride from evolution, is the origin of the code. And here, even the most secular voices get quiet and honest. Paul Davies puts it plainly. How the information-bearing properties of life arose from lifeless chemistry is one of the great unsolved problems of biology. The leading naturalistic candidate, the RNA world, is a serious research program, but a self-replicating RNA has never been found in nature, and how a long enough replicating molecule arose from raw chemistry is, by researchers' own admission, unsolved. So we're not betting on a gap. We're weighing two hypotheses against one specific present-tense fact, and asking which one expects that fact more. The fact is the arbitrary mapping. Crick himself called the genetic code a frozen accident, meaning the assignment of this codon to that amino acid isn't forced by chemistry. The symbols don't resemble their meanings. The link is conventional, like letters to sounds. Now run the Bayesian question, not does this prove God? It doesn't, and I won't say it does. The question is a likelihood ratio. Which hypothesis assigns higher probability to a system of arbitrary symbol to meaning conventions plus the machinery to read them? On one hand, undirected chemistry, which has, so far, produced no other example of an arbitrary symbolic code anywhere in nature that wasn't built by a mind. On the other, a mind, which is the only known source of arbitrary symbolic codes. Languages, ciphers, software, every one of them. That doesn't crush the other pan. Your prior still does real work. If you walked in certain no mind exists behind nature, you'll rightly demand a lot here. But honestly, a present-day working arbitrary code is more expected if mind is somewhere upstream than if it isn't. That raises the posterior. It moves the needle. It doesn't end the conversation. It's one weight on one side of a scale you keep loading your whole life. And if you've been here before, notice this is the same shape of argument we ran on the cosmic constants in our first evidence file. A specified, improbable arrangement that a mind expects more readily than blind chance does. Two independent scales in physics and in biology leaning the same direction. That's not proof. It's convergence. And convergence is exactly what should move a Bayesian. And let me be honest about what would move it the other way, because that's the most important thing this channel does. If researchers demonstrate an undirected, step-by-step chemical route from raw molecules to a self-replicating symbolic code, this particular weight gets a lot lighter. That's a real live possibility. We're not afraid of it. We're watching for it. Here's what stops me every time. The deepest layer of life isn't a substance, it's a word, information, meaning carried in symbols. And we, the only other code writers we know of, recognize it instantly because it looks like the kind of thing we do. 2,000 years ago, John opened his gospel with a claim that should make the hair on your arm stand up if you've sat with this evidence. In the beginning was the Word. In Greek, the logos, reason, meaning, the rational principle underneath everything. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and through Him all things were made. The first Christians weren't doing molecular biology, but they staked everything on the idea that reason and meaning aren't a late accident in a mindless universe. They're the foundation of it, that the universe is, at bottom, the expression of a mind. Paul says it in one line this channel keeps coming back to, "In Him all things hold together." I can't hand you faith from a codon chart. Evidence raises the odds. It doesn't carry you the last step. Trust does. And that's true of knowing any person, not a bug in the case. But if the code in your cells points anywhere, it points toward a word that was spoken before you existed and a person who offers himself freely. No paywall, no tier, no catch. That part was never for sale. Last time we watched the universe's oldest light and asked what it was for. Tonight the same word turns up written into you, not in the stars, but in the cells. Examine the dark honestly. Watch for the light.